online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey.
Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. New York Times. 8 months into Biden's presidency, both he and the First Lady are finding that winning the battle for the soul of the nation may be his most elusive campaign promise. Trying to prove it's still possible, not a doctor, Joe Biden isn't standing on the sidelines. I mean, the New York Times has better comedy writers than SNL. Maybe they should share them. Yeah. Battle for the soul of the nation is proving elusive for Joe Biden. Well, that may be a port that Joe Biden can never reach based on what's happened over the last 4 weeks in Afghanistan. And the news keeps getting more problematic for Joe Biden and his quest for national unity. There's a report out suggesting that the Kabul airport suicide bomber who murdered those 13 soldiers was set free from Bagram prison after Biden abandoned the base in July.
Oh, yeah. I remember seeing that footage when thousands were running free, grabbed their bags, and Taliban was recruiting a lot of them. They were already a part of the Taliban.
The suicide bomber, whose name is not important, so I won't mention it, incarcerated at the Bagram prison for the past 4 years until he was set free by the Taliban, and then murdered 13 U.S. servicemen and 169 Afghans. Mm-hmm. And what's the status? Because I hope people still keep asking, what's the status of Americans being evacuated, as well as legal permanent residents, as well as any additional Afghan allies to our military over the last 20 years?
Mainstream media, cable networks, they've moved on. They're not following up on this.
Oh, I know, but we're going to. For more on all of these topics, we're pleased to be joined by Toby Harden. He's a Washington-based former correspondent for the Sunday Times of London and the Daily Telegraph, specializing in terrorism and war. Has been reporting from Afghanistan since 2006. He's got a new book, First Casualty, The Untold Story of the CIA Mission to Avenge 9/11. Toby, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, Dan and Amy. Great to be with you.
This story of the CIA mission that you chronicle in your book is interesting. This is Team Alpha, the first Americans behind enemy lines after 9/11. Sort of give us the picture of what that first special ops team Alpha did when they arrived.
Sure, yeah, it's fascinating. So immediately after 9/11, the Pentagon didn't have a plan for Afghanistan. Amazing, really. You expect them to have everything, up to and including invading Canada, but apparently in 2001, no plan for Afghanistan. The CIA, however, did, because, they helped the Mujahideen back in the 1980s. They had been warning about an al-Qaeda strike on America for at least the previous 2 years, and a small number of CIA officers, one of them, David Tyson, who's the central figure in the book, have been going in and out of the Panjshir Valley from Tajikistan, on rickety old Russian helicopters. But, we all remember those times, if we're old enough, of the sort of almost the sort of imperative to get the people who carried out 9/11 and stop another attack. And so in very short order, the CIA got a team together. There were 8 of them, Team Alpha, and they weren't all elite warriors. Some of them were just linguists and tribal experts. They were on the older side. The oldest one was 49 years old. And on October 17th, 2001, they were dropped into the mountains south of Mazar-e-Sharif. And it was, they were dropped into the unknown. They didn't know what they were going to face. They were kind of at the tip of the spear, as the military like to say. And they linked up with a warlord, Abdul Rashid Dostum, who was sort of notorious for switching sides, who fought with the Soviets against the American-backed Mujahideen in the 1980s. So the the first thing was, is he going to shoot us or is he going to be our friend? And he was their friend. And they had to ride on horseback through the mountains. There were no vehicles. The airstrikes were being called in while cavalry, 19th century style cavalry charges were taking place. So it was everything was kind of rough and ready. Everything was improvised and lots of adaptation. But with a very small number of troops, hundreds of Americans on the ground, not 100,000 plus that we got in sort of 2010, 2011.
So
they were able to topple the Taliban regime.
So just to because I think a lot of people have seen these movies too. So the book Horse Soldiers, by Doug Stanton, that was turned into the movie 12 Strong.
Yeah.
That was also in the days after 9/11. That was the Elite Special Forces Unit ODA 595, and they were horseback too in Mazar Sharif. So can you give us a handle on sort of who was doing what and how what Doug Stanton documents in his book bumps up against your book?
Yeah. So I know Doug, and that was a great book and an excellent movie. So the CIA was in 3 days before ODA 595.
Okay.
They were kind of like the pathfinders. The military was concerned about search and rescue and safety, and the CIA was like, we don't care, we're going in. So 3 days before ODA 595 got in, Team Alpha were there, and they facilitated ODA 595 their entry, and they introduced them to DOSTM. I mean, the interesting thing, Doug's book, I think, was published like 2008, and so at that point, the CIA most of them were still serving. They weren't saying anything about their mission. And in the movie 12 Strong, I think the CIA is sort of completely written out of it, apart from there's one guy, 2 minutes in the middle of it. But actually, there were 12 from ODA 595, hence 12 Strong. The 8 guys from CIA Team Alpha, and they were alongside each other, but they had different missions. I mean, ODA 595 and the Horse Soldiers, they focused on the Taliban, and in particular, calling in these airstrikes. The CIA guys were focused on Al Qaeda, and they were focused on the tribal rivalries between the different groups, which were pretty serious. I mean, there's a Tajik leader who was on the ground at the time, who was nominally an ally of Abdul Rashid Dostum, the Uzbek leader, who was the main guy, but he was also sometimes an enemy, and he was jealous that Dostum had the Americans, and so the CIA had to kind of manipulate and work those sort of tribal rivalries. They also had $3 million with them. The Green Berets didn't have very much money.
Right.
The CIA brought $3 million.
CIA always has the cash, right? Yeah, right. With respect to that, so that's interesting. So thinking about the CIA operation there, since you wrote about it in your book, First Casualty, and where we're at now, and the Biden administration talking about the over-the-horizon strategy, which didn't work out so well with the first drone strike. But how important then was the CIA's role, those spies on the ground over the last 20 years in terms of navigating what the U.S. military was doing or not doing?
Well, absolutely crucial. I mean, there's a lot of skepticism about this concept of over the horizon, because I mean, what the CIA believes in really is sort of ground truth and looking people in the eye and maybe handing over some cash or but holding them to account, and that's the kind of thing that's done face to face. And so there's over that period, there's been CIA on the ground throughout. At one point, the CIA station in Kabul was the largest CIA station in the world, and actually, Scott Spellmeyer, who's one of the original Team Alpha guys, he later became the station chief in Kabul. And now we've lost all that. I mean, I was at an event in New York City at One World Trade Center, the Freedom Tower, on Friday, and it was a lot of CIA guys, paramilitaries, including current serving officers. And one of them was saying, in these dark times, we've got all our assets out, all the commandos that the CIA trained were out, all their families, and that's an achievement. But there was this sort of unspoken sense of loss here that we had a handle. I mean, people use the term we've had our boot on their neck for the last 2 decades, and obviously that boot's now removed, and we're back to the pre-9/11 period of safe haven for terrorists. Al Qaeda is still there, so it's kind of it's a pretty dangerous and in some ways depressing situation in Afghanistan, and none of the Team Alpha members who I'm talking to all the time will deny that.
Well, it's a complete failure on our part. We got beat. I think we did. And so what are your thoughts and your Team Alpha's thoughts about President Biden's rushed exit out of Afghanistan, and that we lost 13 lives on the way out?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the interesting thing about these people is that in 2001, they were focused on the mission, right? And at the moment, it's humbling. And actually, this morning, the translator that I worked with in late last year is out of Afghanistan. He's on a plane, and Team Alpha members, their current mission is to get their Afghan allies out.
Yeah,
The people who helped them in 2001, and so they're very focused on that. Then much less focused on the day-to-day politics. But
13 people died needlessly. They didn't have to. If he would have planned this exit better and not have closed Bagram Air Force Base and gotten everyone out from there.
I don't think anyone is arguing that this was well planned or executed, and certainly there is a sense that, well, first of all, there's a sense that we should have kept some troops there, and that some kind of residual force. 2,500 were there at the end of the Trump administration. That had been brought down from 5,000. There's certainly a sense we should have had several thousand U.S. troops remaining there. And absolutely, I mean, the exit was botched. It was a complete mess. There's certainly a sense that Bagram should not have been closed as early as it was. And they're focused on getting people out, and there'll be time for the finger pointing afterwards. But it's certainly not America's finest hour, to put it mildly. And the members of Team Alpha, six who are still living, they feel that very kind of keenly every day.
As individuals who ostensibly understand the reality on the ground better than, I don't know, a lot of these Ivy League educated Council on Foreign Relations members that make their way to the State Department, what do they say about 20 years that's gone by, and now where do we find Afghanistan? They understand the rivalries, they understand the topography, they understand the relationship between Al Qaeda and the Taliban. So are we in a worse position in 2021 than we were before 9/11, 2001?
I don't think we're I don't, and they don't think we're in a worse position, but it's pretty grim. I mean, there are a lot of parallels between the situation we've kind of created for ourselves and for Afghanistan now to the pre-9/11 period. So we've had a small number of people holding out in the Panjshir Valley. That was happening in the 1990s. You've got an Al Qaeda presence and a safe haven. And we haven't got eyes on the ground. We haven't got boots on the ground, and the over the horizon, as you kind of suggested, could turn out to be something that's just really a nice phrase, but doesn't really mean too much. We do have a couple of things we don't have. We didn't have in 2001. Perhaps reasons for some optimism. We haven't had an Al Qaeda attack for 20 years. That's the first achievement. When people still say, was it worth it? The second thing is that we can argue about whether the mission should have been, democracy and girls going to school and all that kind of stuff. But we have, over 20 years, we've got a new generation of Afghans who are not going to stand for Taliban rule. I mean, the Taliban is going to have a hell of a job running this country because, a whole generation tasted sort of a degree of freedom and modernity. So my belief is that this is not the end of the story. There will be an Afghan resistance. There will be an Afghan opposition. I hope the United States doesn't forget the Afghans again, as we sort of did a little bit after the Russians left in 1989. And that, we know where that ended up with. That ended up with 9/11 in 2001. I mean, I hope we don't turn our backs on this country.
Well, and
we do so at our peril.
I mean, I hope you're right, but I also hope that it doesn't become a massacre at the hands of the Taliban, because this is the only thing they know, and this is the way they know how to keep power. And then what do we do if you have the Taliban slaughtering people on a Pol Pot scale?
I don't know. I mean, it's very worrying. I mean, one of the things is the same characters in the Taliban government that we knocked over in 2001. They're back. So Mullah Fazl, who was sort of the butcher of the North, a guy who was responsible for genocide of Hazaras, Shia minorities in the North in the late 1990s, 2000, 2001. He's back. He's the Minister of Defense. He was one of the Bergdahl Five that was released back in 2014, I think, the Obama administration. 4 of those are back in government, and the 5th is a provincial governor. So we've kind of seen this movie before, and it's pretty hard to be optimistic about those guys being some kind of new Taliban. And there's nothing more than a few words we hear from them that would indicate they're anything other than the same Taliban we saw before.
He is Toby Harden. The new book, he's been reporting from Afghanistan since 2006. The new book, pick it up. First Casualty, the untold story of the CIA mission to avenge 9/11. First Casualty, Toby Harden. Toby, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Thank you. And good luck with the book. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Hi, it's Sean Thompson here. Let me tell you about my good friends at Matrix Home Solutions. They're a brand new sponsor to my show. And when it comes to the top quality home improvement projects, no other company comes close to Matrix. They focus on the 4 major areas to increase the value of your home and improve your lifestyle: basement remodeling, bathroom transformations, custom garage flooring and storage, and energy-saving solar options. Now is the perfect time to contact my friends at Matrix to discuss ideas, plans for your home. Matrix is a premier choice for renovation services. They deliver exceptional, professional, and hassle-free experience. Go to matrixhomesolutions.com to view projects, photo galleries, special financing options, and more. That's matrixhomesolutions.com. Tell them Sean Thompson sent you for an exclusive savings. matrixhomesolutions.com. No other company comes close to Matrix. That's matrixhomesolutions.com. Matrix Home